God, I wrote so much. Finally, we've arrived at Arc 4. I genuinely thought that this was going to be quicker than it was, because I felt that this was really essentially a one-note arc with basically one conflict. Nothing like Arc 3 was, that was just overdone. But I was incorrect. With all the other life events I had going on, it obviously took longer. Next time I work on an arc, I'm going to streamline the process a little bit, because what I've been doing is reading the entire thing over again, going back and getting screenshots, then writing a script. From now on, this time, I'm going to do it chapter by chapter, so that I will have everything gathered faster, and then hopefully out faster. Like most of my arc videos, I'm going to start with the meat and potatoes of the arc. We start off seeing that the Oracle senses some kind of conflict about to encroach on Kandrakar. So he gathers the congregation and asks them their thoughts and opinions on some of the latest events. And we find that they are unhappy with how bold he's been, especially when it came to freeing those astral drops and the memory spell on the detective. So someone steps forward that we've never seen before, almost rudely interrupting the Oracle. As he's speaking, he's saying that he's truly speaking on behalf of everyone that agrees with him. The person that has stepped forward is named Indarno, and he doesn't believe that the Oracle has been responsible in his role and that he's no longer suited for it. Therefore, wanting something called the Dispute, which is sort of a trial, which hence the title of the arc, Trial of the Oracle. Back on Earth, we see that the girls are exhausted, and this is likely due to them having given up the gift of the nymph Xinjing, which was in Arc 3. They gave it up for Maki, so he could essentially come back to life. Irma, being the only non-exhausted one at this point, kind of affirms my theory that she's the strongest guardian that we figured out that video, hence she's not exhausted and she had transformed the most times, so I think that was pretty legit. At the end of the day, Halen gets home and notices a wind chime. It's an old rediscovered gift from Yanlin to her son, and Halen can see the memory. She reminds us actually at this point of how she did it to see using Miss Rudolph's music box and the coin at the carnival. Halen starts to hear Yanlin's voice from Kandrakar, and she's starting to say that she has urgent news about the Oracle and that the girls need to meet up immediately. We cut to Taranee and Cornelia at the cook's house. Of course, Taranee is livid that she has to cancel her date with Nigel and says that the Oracle can't continue treating them like puppets, essentially. Then she even gives an eerie threat, saying that even the Oracle of Kandrakar can't afford to play with fire. Here at the park, they reiterate that they don't have astral drops to help them escape to Kandrakar anymore. Irma comes up with the idea of saying that they have extra credit, and Halen, of course, doesn't like lying about this. And the only reason for this meeting was for Halen to tell the girls that they might need to testify for the Oracle. Afterward, Cornelia has to take Napoleon to the vet. Will tags along with her, and we see Cornelia sensing, too, that trouble is coming as Taranee is furious, Halen is paranoid, and Will seems off. Barely any time is spent at the vet before Kandrakar calls them. At the trial, the girls are unsettled by Indarno's brashness, and Will's brought up to testify first. And she says that she always felt like the Oracle was doing his best, and we see that the Oracle knows that this is not true, and so does Indarno. So he calls up a past memory portal that shows Will lashing out at the Oracle. Of course, this was back in Arc 2 when he revealed that he knew Caleb and Cornelia weren't going to be together, and Cornelia steps in to defend her. So Irma blurts out that they weren't happy that the Oracle knew that Cornelia and Caleb were going to break up and still let them get together and let it happen, because all of that drama caused Nerissa to happen and all these other bad things. Cornelia eyes her angrily, then Indarno brings up a portal that shows Will's sad demeanor at the end of Arc 3. Shortly after, Taranee stands up and says that the burden of Kandrakar and being a guardian was something that they really weren't prepared to handle. She feels used and that they're being used now. The Oracle is so surprised that she still resents him. He thinks to himself that the girls are not pawns but instruments, which to me sounds a lot like the same thing. But you could agree that the Oracle has to act through the Guardians as a loophole to Kandrakar's rules. Irma mistakenly mentions the astral drops. So the astral drops and the memory spell even cause Tibor to agree with Indarno, and Halen then stands up saying that maybe the Oracle should be able to defend himself, and this was really tough for her, and the Oracle acknowledges that. The Oracle responds to this by saying he can defend himself at any time. However, he chooses not to because he doesn't want to bring any further dissent into Kandrakar and just chooses to be judged. As the girls are waiting outside to hear the final judgment, we go back to the Oracle's thoughts, and he's thinking to himself that he feels guilty over this first lie that he's ever spoken to Kandrakar. But I don't think this debunks my Nerissa theory, because it specifically says his spoken word, which means that, you know, he could have worded stuff differently and was telling the truth, but if you weren't paying attention closely, maybe you weren't understanding the same thing. We've seen it in, you know, different movies all the time. It's like you could say, yes, I ate today, but you could leave out that maybe you ate the rest of somebody's leftovers. And then shockingly, he admits to himself that the concern for Kandrakar is not coming before his concern of himself. The sentence says that for giving the Guardians little guidance and for acting against the rules of Kandrakar, he has been sentenced to exile. The Oracle walks through a waterfall that washes away his mark and turns his jade green robes into baggy brown cloth. Indarno tells us and everybody that this waterfall has brought the Oracle to who he was before being Oracle, indicating that this is a position that has been filled by various people. He asks what the Oracle's true name is, but he doesn't even remember. And we do learn, though, that he is from Basiliad, which is the planet or world that Orube is from. And that's where he's going to go back. So a new Oracle must be selected, and Yanlin and Indarno have been put up as the candidates. Surprisingly not Tibor. Maybe he's just too old for this. I don't know. The girls return home, and Irma starts to show evidence of not having Xinjing's gift anymore by her and Cornelia's hair curling and fraying. So it's Taranee that kind of connects and explains that all of their exhaustion and ability to not, you know, bounce back so quick after missions is because they gave up the gift of Nymph Xinjing, and she clarifies that back in Arc 3, she felt completely exhausted every time they transformed, but she didn't want to show it or talk about it because she says in her own words that she didn't want to be considered a whiner. Remember in Arc 3, she just refused to be a guardian for a bit there. And also Irma has started to fall asleep in class. They all start complaining about how tiring and exhausting transforming is now, and Will seriously says, do they regret giving up the power? And Taranee rightfully raises her voice and yells that they used it for Maquis. Mind you, they brought him back to life. So Will was literally just asking if they regret bringing Maquis back to life. That was very selfish. The girls then begin to muse on what if Yanlin became the Oracle. And while Halen was first for it, she's now against it, having seen that the Oracle didn't remember his name or anything anymore. And Halen is, again, almost selfishly saying that she doesn't want Yanlin to become Oracle because she doesn't want to be forgotten. Back in Kandrakar, we see Tibor and Yanlin musing about becoming the Oracle, and they briefly talk about how it's a shame because the previous Oracle that we just lost had finally started to express his humanity, and Tibor says that Yanlin's anger is going to be her strength as Oracle once she bears the mark of illumination.
Wow! Illumination!
Not that one, this one. She asks if him saying that means he's gonna vote for her, and I don't think he was going to because this look he has here is a little suspicious. So the ceremony begins, and we see Tibor looking lovingly at Yanlin while Indarno looks on with a glare. And we don't get to see the results of the election as we suddenly cut to Wind Chime Yanlin, where she says to Halen that the girls need to meet up immediately as the new Oracle has been chosen. She first calls Will, and Will can't show up because she's grounded. The school called, and they're very disappointed in her grades as they're sinking again. And Susan starts to say, where did she go wrong? Which is a little bit painful for Will. Well, I mean, mind you, this is shortly after everything that Dee did, so Will kind of looks like a problem child right now, and this causes Will to feel desperate and alone. Of course, Will and Matt are having issues again, which we're gonna save for later, Then we also see that Taranee was called, and Cornelia is at her house currently, and the school is also saying stuff about Taranee's grades being bad, but Taranee's able to cover cleverly by saying that Cornelia is currently over to study with her. And Irma is having her own crisis that we're going to cover later. So Halen's the only one who's able to make it to the initiation. Yanlin only came to say that the results have been chosen, and she was asking the girls to come to the announcement of the results. So butterflies swarm, and while one does land in Yanlin's hand, it's not bearing the Kandrakar mark. Instead, that one lands on Indarno's head and sears the mark into his skin. Yanlin's look of surprise made me suspicious about the process. So while editing this part, I just noticed that Yanlin's butterfly does have the mark and then suddenly doesn't have the mark. So make of that what you will. Indarno was chosen. And almost immediately, Indarno says that the rules they used to banish the previous oracle were ridiculous and that Kandrakar should be taking a more active role in the universe. Essentially, the opposite of what he said to get rid of the oracle. So he's being a hypocrite right now. And as this is happening, the blue butterfly that seared the mark is soaring away, which, I don't know, for some reason gives me a little bit of a suspicious feeling that maybe somehow this whole voting process and initiation was tweaked with, but we truly never get the answer of that. The girls are all called to Miss Knickerbocker's office, which I believe is the next day, and all told that they need to do community service to up their grades, which means their lie isn't exactly a lie anymore that they were going to use to get away. However, it now means that they now also have to figure out getting away from the actual extra credit when they need to. For some reason, Group Itch is assigned to a museum and Will is just assigned to animal shelters. I'm not exactly sure why they separated them, but it is sort of significant for the plot, so I'll let it be. And then disturbingly, Yanlin takes over Knickerbocker briefly to send another message. The Oracle, Indarno, is kind of bothered that they were not there for the initiation and feels, I guess, personally offended by that. So he calls the girls and wants to speak with them. Cornelia expresses that she's concerned about this new oracle. So when they get there, Kandrakar seems to have received a gothic homemaking makeover.
Interesting.
I heard something. We see that the girls decide to not call the new oracle. And this comes from Taranee, which means a lot because we saw that she did not enjoy the previous one. So Yanlin takes some time to show the girls a little bit of Indarno's backstory. Turns out that he was also from Basiliad, in a tribe warring against the tribe the Oracle is from, which was called the Asha. We see that Indarno halted the execution of what would one day be the Oracle, and even back then he was speaking very wise, saying that he should let wisdom illuminate his decision on whether or not he should be killed. Indarno stops his superior from executing the oracle, which is how he got those scars on his face. In present time, we enter the Great Hall of Kandrakar and see that it has become an extravagant throne room. Do you hear that? Indarno makes everything super uncomfortable by suddenly demanding the heart of Kandrakar from Will, and I mean super uncomfortable. I mean, just look at this. Ugh. Will refuses, and as she slinks away, he reiterates to everybody that the Guardian would have to give him the heart willingly, and that this was just a test. So this is some kind of power play where he tells them that their young age and affection towards his predecessor clouds their judgment, and that he would have immediately given it back and bowed to Will. This actually causes the congregation to remember Luba's argument from Arc 2 that the girls were not worthy and not mature. Next, Indarno reveals his new advisor instead of Tibor. We have Vol from Meridian. In private, Will is expressing her emotions and guilt about not having given the heart to the Oracle, as that whole situation confused the heck out of her and all of us, to be honest. And she almost goes out to go give him the heart, and Yanlin stops her. Back on Earth, the girls start their community service at the museum. Meanwhile, Indarno starts something called the Celestial Search, where he's trying to find new guardians. So maybe it's not a birthright. He demands that these guardians be stronger and wants only 3 of them. He then creepily says he would prefer that these guardians have pleasing appearances. And then we also see him looking at Yan Lin, aggressively thinking, do not get in my way. Later, we find Cornelia ice skating, which I do want to say quickly. I love that the girls' hobbies aren't necessarily tied to their element. Like, their element isn't everything about them. Like, you would expect maybe Halen or Irma to be ice skating because of ice and, water and air for the activities. And you would expect Irma to be a painter and Will to not be a swimmer. So it's interesting that all of their hobbies are separate from their guardian identities. That shows that, they're their own people. It's just something very unique and cool that I like, that most shows that would have something like this, or even most comics that have something like this, everything about them would be their element. For example, like, the Earth Guardian would have green hair and love the color green and love to eat plants or something. But it's different here, and I love it. Ice skating makes Cornelia feel at ease, and it's nice to see that she keeps up with this hobby, even if we don't see her do it much as readers. Unfortunately, she tries to do a trick that injures her ankle, and we see the Hales have arguments on the safety of her continuing to ice skate, and this injury could cause her to miss out on the championships. Around this time, we see that Cornelia is being watched in a portal by Indarno. His intentions at this point are unclear, and then he goes on to openly say that he wants to change a lot of Kandrakar's rules, that he has a distaste for Kandrakar's procedures. So the Celestial Search has brought what only can be described as scantily clad women in their 20s, which is the form that the Guardians currently turn into when they transform. Indarno expresses that the Guardians should be women and not grade school kids. It's also revealed that Earth/Heatherfield is one of the only places that doesn't know about Kandrakar and the Guardians, as we see that families have come with the Guardians that they're trying to choose, and they say that there's a lot of pride in being a Guardian and being in a family that had one. During this tournament, Indarno asks what those guards standing by the family are, and Val explains that he should recognize them as the White Heralds of Kandrakar, guarding people that visit Kandrakar, as he's the one that created them. Indarno distracts Val from the fact that he didn't know this by then asking for the key to Kandrakar's prison, the Tower of Mists, as Indarno was the warden before becoming Oracle, and that he wants to simply wish the prisoners one last farewell. So we get to see our old pal Phobos, that the narration refers to as a shadow of himself, and we also see Cedric's prison, which is a room that looks like more than it is. An illusion, as you would say. Indarno sasses Cedric, and he's surprised by this, and says elders of Kandrakar are usually more serious. This makes Indarno laugh and call the elders boring. This angers Cedric, and Indarno eggs him to strike him. Cedric senses it's a test and calls Indarno sadistic. Then Indarno says he doesn't remember Cedric being so reluctant to react or cowardly. Cedric lunges and Indarno zaps him. Indarno pushes him to look deeply at him, to notice something. Only something, he says, that can be seen through suffering and pain. Then he knows. This is Phobos.
And so dawns a new era. The Age of Phobos! We have a winner! Kandrakar, prepare. Your new master is on his way.
Cedric grovels, and we learn how this came to be. When Phobos was imprisoned, his magic was mostly drained, but he says that he started to feed off his bitterness and hate and gained some power from that. Which, quick little insert here, that goes along with one of my theory videos coming out on the power of darkness. So I just need to get us further along with more evidence from the actual arcs before I actually go into those theories. So hopefully faster. One day he pretended to be sick, and then once Indarno got close enough to him, he used this power to essentially pull a Freaky Friday. And because of this, we will now be referring to him as Faux Darno. Then Phobos clarifies to Cedric that he can make use of some of Andarno's memories, but not all of them, which does explain why he didn't know the Oracle's name when in fact he should have. Cedric asks to be set free, but Faux Darno says that he has a plan that Cedric needs to be a part of, and that he knows Kandrakar is watching him every day to see how he's going to be as a new Oracle, so he can't take any chances. Then he summons a silver butterfly. He tells Cedric that this is a spell that will weaken the Guardians, what Faux Darno believes is Cedric's greatest desire, telling him to cultivate and pamper his hatred like a newborn. Strange wording. We head back to the girls and we see Haylin joking about wanting to have used her powers on the students at the museum. So Cornelia is in a bit of a sour mood after her mother and sister ruffled her about skating being dangerous. Will tries to empathize with Cornelia by saying that siblings are supposed to be like that, and Cornelia lashes out at her saying how could she possibly understand as she's an only child, and Will says that she really doesn't want to be. And then Cornelia says that she envies her because she is an only child. Meanwhile, the silver butterfly from earlier enters the Hales' home, and as it passes the family photos, Cornelia seems to disappear from them. And even the plants die that it touches. Cornelia and Will aren't far off as they're essentially in the parking lot of Cornelia's apartment. Cornelia shows her great managing skills by reminding Will that they're going to meet up later at Orube's to discuss Andarno and what to do since they actually have extra credit now, in terms of when they need to escape to go on a mission. Will is again only making excuses about how she's mad at Orube, which we'll cover when we get to our section on Will. So in my version, not pictured here, Cornelia yells bull, which is a shortened version of a swear, and that's in the Yen Press release. Will gets aggravated about how Cornelia is always sure of herself, and Cornelia just simply remarks, "It's fitting of the Earth Guardian." Will storms off with tears in her eyes, and Cornelia is surprised, saying she simply stated the truth, and Will says this was just too harsh, which she then says is a constant for Cornelia. A little guilty and weary, Cornelia heads up to her apartment, ignored by a neighbor as if he doesn't know her. So Cornelia tries to unlock the door and her key seems to not be working. Her mother opens the door and then we finally understand. Something terrible has happened. Her parents don't know who she is. Her little sister cowering at what she sees as some random girl freaking out. Cornelia begins to panic further, represented beautifully by the panels distorting. She runs to her bedroom only to discover an office, and her father reiterates, "We only have one daughter. Our stable guardian of Earth no longer has any ground to stand on because she no longer exists." Then we see Haylin's house, and she says goodbye to her mother, saying she's going to go hang out with Cornelia, and her mother even asks if Cornelia is a new friend. Haylin ends up going back up to her room, and she spots something quite bizarre. A silver dragon. The comic then cuts back to Cornelia, who's now standing on Taranee's doorstep. Even Peter doesn't recognize her, which then, of course, makes Cornelia start spiraling again, thinking that everyone has forgotten her. But thankfully, as she's dashing away, Taranee calls her name, meaning that Taranee remembers her. And then we get to see the iconic Halloween photo with Cornelia missing. Just quickly, I want to mention that she went to go look for Will first, but Taranee's house was closer. After that, we're all at Orube's, and we finally get to see what happened with Haylin and that silver dragon, wanting to know if it's related to that silver butterfly, as they're both silver creatures. But it turns out that that dragon is a protector of the Lin family that, according to Yan Lin, who weighs in, is someone or something that has been protecting their family for generations. Just reminding you that Yan Lin has been confirmed to have lived for centuries before she decided to settle down and have her family, which of course we will talk about in another video. And I also noticed it's strange that the restaurant, the Silver Dragon, uses that name but has the dragon on the sign when it's in its resting form as red. So I just think that's kind of strange. And one more thing. Very much Mushu vibes. Moving on, the dragon stopped the butterfly. Yan Lin explains that the butterfly was still looking for memories of Cornelia to erase, which means Cornelia was its only target. Even though it was obviously passing pictures of the other guardians, it was focusing on attacking Cornelia. Yan Lin says if they bring this butterfly to the heart of Kandrakar, Cornelia will get a chance to bring back her memories in existence. Cornelia looks at Will and says it's all in your hands. But Will says it's all up to the heart. So suddenly the girls find them in what appears to be a snowy landscape. They see the butterfly floating towards what looks like a cocoon, and as they get closer, they see that it's a cocoon made of Cornelia's photos. A crystalline Cornelia appears, which I'm smiling because her right wing is broken, and my Cornelia McDonald's toy hanging right here has her right wing broken as well, so now my broken McDonald's toy is canon. And keeping with our fun names, we're going to call Crystal Cornelia Cornelia. So Cornelia puts Cornelia in a trance, and this appears to make her broken wings start to grow. In the vision, Cornelia sees herself a few years ago, where she first experiences her power. Then she moves to the moment where she met Caleb. She muses about staying in this moment forever with him, but then decides that she doesn't want to stay. After this, she finds herself at Lillian's birth and begins seeing through her younger self. In looking at her baby sister, she's reminded about her face when Lillian forgot her. And the whole time, Cornelia's wings have been growing in each memory. Baby Lillian starts to cry in the memory, and somehow this wakes Cornelia up. So the girls seem to be getting trapped in their own cocoons of photos. Cornelia attacks Cornelia, and she's easily defeated. And this look of relief between Will and Cornelia is everything. Cornelia returns boisterous and extremely happy, and this confuses her family, switching between crying and laughing, and this probably reinforces any concern they had about Cornelia's mental health, which to them probably appears very much in danger because of how she was when Caleb was a flower and all of these things. And of course, Fodarno is mad that his plan failed. Some time passes, and we see Val and Fodarno discussing Meridian. Fodarno says the Esquire line should be removed, and Val says that Elion is beloved. Just so you know, Val is not in on Fodarno's secret identity. Okay, I'm gonna get this out of the way right away and say I do not like the art style of this chapter, and I know the chapters usually have different artists, but usually it's hard to tell. This chapter, though, looks more like Code Lyoko than Witch to me, and it's just jarring. Moving on. Fodarno proposes that Meridian run an election, claiming Elion's relation to Phobos is concerning, stating Elion's refusal to step down would be seen as hostility against Kandrakar. Then he edgelords at his reflection. Now to Meridian. A harvest festival is a few days away. This harvest festival was implemented by Elion for farmers to share excess with everyone. A message arrives from Kandrakar. Her aide, Nagadir, is given leave, but she asks Caleb to stay. She is shocked by the letter from Kandrakar. Caleb says that Elion has only brought peace and stability,
freedom, justice, and security.
And surely the Oracle will understand. Caleb and Elion have clearly been getting close as he calls her Elion, blushes, and corrects himself to say, my queen. Elion ends up refusing to step down, which causes Fodarno to declare ties be cut between Metamor and Kandrakar. The new Oracle summons the Guardians and challenges their ability to obey and be mature. This causes Will to firmly state that they will do what needs to be done to prove to Kandrakar that they are capable. Only after this does he say that he'll need to have Elion step down as ruler of Meridian. Cornelia, of course, is furious at the claims that Elion is a tyrant like Phobos, and that she will be re-elected anyway. Fodarno uses this opportunity to say that they are not suitable for this task. Before Cornelia can explode, however, Will steps in and affirms that they can do it. The other Guardians are not happy. It turns out that Phobos has creatures called Sharvaks that were trained during his days and plans to have them attack the Guardians after they try to apprehend Elion as a frame job, to make it look like Elion sent the monsters. When the girls do show up in Meridian and tell her why they're there, she nearly faints into Caleb's arms. They decide to enter a private magical barrier to hide from prying eyes. They need to hold hands, and guess who ends up standing next to each other? They come up with a plan to smuggle Elion away and hide the crown. They hide her in a cart, leaving the festival, and she gives her crown to Caleb. Their hands brush. They hide her at Orube's. Fodarno was watching and somehow missed all of this. Sometime after this, Cedric makes an attempt to snatch the heart, but we'll cover that later. Fodarno yells at Cedric, and we learn that he wanted to become a murmurer. Not sure why. They're just a hive mind of spies, it looks like. He talks down him quite frequently, and when he says Cedric's whining is boring him, we see Cedric make an internal threat that one day boredom will be the last of his problems. Fast forward, and we see two congregation members rushing to an emergency meeting called by Fodarno. One of them is questioning their vote. The meeting is again him arguing the girls' abilities to complete the task. Yanlin defends them. Fodarno then declares that they bring Elion in against her will, that their roles are more significant than their friendship. A few days later, back on Earth at Orube's, we see Elion and her watching a televised Carmilla concert. We'll cover that later too. We again see Cornelia skating. They're practicing a lot lately for an upcoming event. Cornelia has a rival that might swoop in due to her frequent absences. Eventually, Elion begins to feel trapped and cowardly, requesting to face Kandrakar. As she looks into the new Oracle's eyes, she senses pain, revenge, and anger. It instinctively causes her to yell that she will not turn over the crown. This causes him to immediately send her to the Tower of Mists. Fodarno sees that Elion did not bring the Crown of Light with her to Kandrakar. He orders the Guardians to go straight to Meridian and bring it back. Irma brings up the fact that without the Astral Drops, they have already been gone too long and need more time. Then we are introduced to a new artifact in the Witch universe, the Breath of Time. This is a rounded hourglass full of sand that, once used by the Guardians, it grows in size and freezes time while they are away on a mission. And I just want to throw in that you can buy your own Breath of Time from Etsy. I actually got one for me and one for my Cornelia doll. Fodarno says that since Will already holds the burden of the Heart of Kandrakar, he gives it to Cornelia. I guess it's fitting, sand and earth, but I have another theory for this, and I will share that after the main plot. The girls, like old times, are split on what to do about Elion. Cornelia is freaking out about Elion being imprisoned, and Will is stressed out. Cornelia says it can't just be Will's decision, and Irma accuses her of being a power trip because of her new necklace. Will doesn't trust that Fodarno will release Elion, and Cornelia does. Irma says she's not moving until Will demands, which causes Will to snip at her next. Haylin suddenly yells. She's been quiet, but her only interjection here is that her grandma wasn't present at their last visit to Kandrakar. After this, Orube kicks them all out and tells them to come back tomorrow. In Kandrakar, we see Fodarno laughing. Quick note, look at Irma blocking the rain. What's funny here and classic of Phobos, especially TV Phobos, is that he's talking about his plan to get the Heart of Kandrakar and the crown when Val walks into the room. But sadly, nothing comes of that. We see what Elion's prison is, as they're all unique to the prisoners. Her light magic is being pulled from her. As she is suffering, she calls back to Phobos' eyes and is able to recognize them as Fodarno's. Let's see how the girls are doing. Cornelia is on the phone with her skate teacher trying to defend her numerous absences from practice. Lillian's face here is horrifying, actually. This, coupled with her anger over Elion's imprisonment, causes her to want to head to Meridian by herself. Haylin wants to go too. This girl is desperate when it comes to her grandma. Cornelia and Haylin never go to Meridian by themselves, though, but it is put to a vote on what to do. Taranee votes to go to Meridian, breaking the tie. The tension is real here. When they get to Meridian, they discover the crown has been put in a protective case. Cornelia hurts herself blasting it. Haylin goes absolutely off the rails in terms of hopeless, saying, "We have nothing to fight with, nothing to hope for." Because the Guardians return without the crown, Indarno claims them unworthy again. Someone in the council actually rolls their eyes at this. Irma calls him deaf because they explained only Elion can break the case's spell. He tells them to leave Kandrakar, and while Cornelia and Haylin mentally beg for more time, Will zaps them away anyways. Before the council, he opens a portal to Elion. He claims the Guardians are Elion's accomplices and offers her freedom in exchange for the crown. Elion gathers her strength and tells Fodarno he will pay for this, for everything. He knows where this is going. She clearly knows his identity, and he closes the portal just as she says, "Mark my words, Phobos," before anyone can hear. It appears the council didn't hear that part. However, the council doesn't like what they did hear. Val announces to the congregation that they have new guardians ready and that the oracle be given his full powers. Indarno plays coy and goes to take a bath. Now that we know this is Phobos, I have to say if we saw him in a bath like this earlier, I probably would have known. Back home, the girls are fighting again. This time, Taranee implodes and reminds them how things always go south when they aren't united, and storms out. Orube is proud of her. Will and Cornelia have a moment. Cornelia makes it clear that she's not trying to take the lead. She explains that while Will does want more information, she doesn't believe that they should wait for answers to fall into their lap, but instead should take a more active role. Will appreciates this. Time has passed, and the congregation has decided to give Fodarno his full powers, specifically on the 20th wind of the 4th era of Kandrakar. Somebody figure that out. We see that Elion is fading, and Yenlin appears to her, the first time we've seen her in quite a bit. Yenlin tells her to reach for her because, quote, "I need you like a flower needs the sun." Yenlin tells Elion that the cell is draining her vital energy, which I believe means her life. We get a small flashback that explains how Yenlin is here. She has become the custodian of the Tower of Mists, which was put up to a vote. It almost happened without a vote, but Tibor called out that this is something that gets voted on normally. Tibor had put Yenlin's name up for consideration, and just then she appears, apologizing for her absence. She had other commitments, she says, and almost as a threat to Fodarno, that she says she won't disappear easily again. Of course, obviously, Yenlin won. She reveals to Elion that she has also discovered Indarno is actually Phobos. Once again, his eyes told all. She knows Indarno is actually trapped in Phobos' body. The girls are fighting again. This time, we will hold off on discussing why for the flow of this video. What's important to know is that Cornelia is prompted to say, "I didn't ask to have this hourglass." Orube steps in and reminds the girls that Will, who has just stormed out, didn't have a choice to be the heart's keeper either. That night, Will has cried herself to sleep and is having dark feelings, and has the troubling thought that if she lets this darkness take over her, maybe she can fall asleep. In her dream, her nightmare, that the darkness has brought her, Will sees the other guardians as towering shadows with bright, leering eyes. She wishes that they would for once understand her decisions without judging or criticizing her. Her thoughts take a turn for the worse when she thinks about entrusting the heart to the darkness inside her and watch it get carried away. Suddenly, and thankfully, Yenlin's voice intrudes her nightmare. She opens her eyes to find a bright orb of light in her room. This light brings her good feelings. She can only see Yenlin with her eyes closed, however. The light is so bright it wakes up Susan, and she thinks it's morning. Yenlin tells Will that she is currently in the Tower of Mists with Elion as the new warden. She also reveals to Will that Phobos has taken over Indarno's body. Will asks why Yenlin can't set Elion free, and Yenlin clarifies only the Oracle can set prisoners free, and that Fodarno is waiting outside. Hurriedly, Yenlin explains that this light before her is nearly the last ounce of Elion's power, and the only key to the crown. Will refuses it, saying she already has too much of a burden. Yenlin says only the heart can hold this light, otherwise Phobos will get it and darkness will go from illusion to reality. Phobos begins his approach on Yenlin. Will is told to open her eyes and keep them open as long as possible. She has no choice but to absorb the light. On a lighter note, Susan is freaking out that it's dark out again and that it's actually 2 a.m. Okay, so the next we see of Yenlin, she is unconscious. Tibor can hardly stand in his grief. Fodarno plays innocent, lamenting that Yenlin had been struck by evil by Elion. In the same breath, he says that this wouldn't have happened if Val was elected, and there is other work to be done. They place Yenlin in the Oblivious Cosmos, where Caleb was healed in Arc 2. Thankfully, before Fodarno can be granted his full powers, he must complete a period of magical fasting. Back in Heatherfield, the girls are discussing what occurred to Will and Yenlin last night, which has devolved into arguing. Orube starts yelling for Will and Cornelia to cut it out, and for Irma to stop eating all the fries. Oh, and Haylin is still proving poorly adjusted to having lost her grandma. She will probably never adjust to death because Yenlin never actually died for her. Taranee puts Will and Cornelia to shame by pointing out yet again that they are fighting and wasting time. They pull together and try to think on how to free Elion. Orube shares that only the Oracle and the Warden can enter the tower, but she does recall Luba telling her during training that there are rare secret doors on the tower, should evacuation ever be needed. Odd. It's convenient for sure, and Will thinks of using the old Oracle to find where the doors are. Since Orube is from Basiliad, they send her to go fetch him. As the girls are leaving, Cedric lurks outside, being angsty about being relegated to spy duty. Will senses someone watching and pretends to say goodbye to Orube, who has already left. They aren't sure who it is, but they suspect that the neighbor from Arc 3, Ray Fieldstein, is watching. Let's take a detour to talk about what the old Oracle has been up to. After he was exiled to W.I.T.C.H, it looks like he's moping around, so down that he starts letting this strange lake start to eat him or something. This is spotted by a group of warriors as he gets swarmed. They're able to just whip it off of him, and the old man of the group recognizes him. Before he was the Oracle, he was this man's master in combat, apparently. He remembers the old Oracle pulling this move and tells him to defend himself, doing the exact, apparently, signature move. It's revealed that one day he just disappeared and has not aged a day since the last time he saw him, while the warrior has clearly become an old man, so he does not believe this is the same person. Especially since he doesn't remember his own name. They challenge him to enter the lake, to prove that he would be the same person. Not sure why exactly. And, of course, he chooses to go into the lake. As I said, this would prove the old Oracle's identity, but the two younger warriors thinks it's a bad idea, and Yar, the older gentleman, says one of them can take his place if he's wrong. When the Oracle walks into the lake, he sinks down, unconscious, and is caught by a giant turtle. He awakens and is suddenly a child. The turtle tells him he's about to relive his entire existence. Very quickly, he's grabbed by a tentacle. This appears to be metaphorical, though, as the turtle says you must forgive yourself for your mistakes and thinks to itself that he must resist, quote, for all of us. As if the turtle has some stake in this man's fate. And by the way, Yanlin is this turtle. This is what she was doing when she was missing. So after whatever happened to the Oracle, we don't get to see any of his reliving his past. He's back to his original age, and the octopus just ditches him. But now he knows his name. It's Himmerish. And for some reason he says, quote, I am nothing. On the shore, night falls, and they think that Himmerish is dead. Yar goes to give up his sword. However, just in time, Himmerish emerges from the water, and he refers to Yar as the Stallion of Fire. He bows in respect. Himmerish seems to be hesitant to tell Yar what he's been up to all these years. Himmerish is next seen preparing to go through a ritual of his own to become a supreme warrior of W.I.T.C.H. That escalated quickly. This ritual, interestingly, embraces darkness, being dependent on a double eclipse. It is during this ritual that Orube appears back on W.I.T.C.H. This area of W.I.T.C.H. is known as the Garden of Two Suns. She quickly discovers the old Oracle's name is Himmerish and learns that he's going through a ritual to become a supreme warrior. She's stopped by a group thinking she is a trespasser. She shrugs them off, saying she came from a garden not much different from this, but they're looking to fight anyway. She brings up that she also did training in Kandrakar, to which the leader is shocked and says that she is a, quote, chosen one. Orube defeats them and hightails it to the temple as a red light pours in. She's able to burst in and reveals Himmerish's backstory as Kandrakar's oracle. Himmerish believes he will be of no help, but Yar explains that the red light, known as the Crimson Dawn, not that one, can bring back lost abilities. The oracle bathes in the Crimson Dawn, a light of good and evil, darkness and light, to restore his ability to travel between worlds. And back to the present. Phobos knows that Yanlin said something to Will in her dream, but he doesn't know what she knows. For example, his identity. He zaps Cedric for not bringing back any intel. He doesn't know what they discussed. While the girls wait for Orube, they live their daily lives. Though Haylin keeps watching the wind chimes, hoping for a word from Yanlin. Poor girl. Good news, Cornelia is moving on as team representative for her skating group. She's at first excited to tell the group, but then gets angry. Because of their discord, Cornelia says that they only each think about themselves, and this success is hers alone. Which is odd considering the group saved her from fading out of existence like a few weeks ago. In the meantime, Will is at home enjoying the peace of mind that the light has brought her. It's described as a feeling she's never experienced, unlike the heart or Cassidy's star then. Later that day, Orube returns with the old oracle, in denim and a ball cap. Will is shocked to see the old oracle here on Earth, but relieved at the same time. And just want to throw this awkward interaction in there really quick. He tells Will they need to strike now before Phobos gains his full powers as Oracle, and that only Will and one other person will be necessary to come with them. We cut to Cornelia's place. She will be the third person. Orube is staying behind. It looks like the Hales went to celebrate Cornelia's success, but Lillian ruined her fabric for her skate look by making it into a banner. The usual chaos ensues. Her mother knows it's not just this causing Cornelia's tantrum. The next page does a beautiful job showing Cornelia's torn feelings by splitting her up with panels. She decides that she is only mad at the girls and goes to celebrate with her family when Will shows up. By the way, here Cornelia says she doesn't have friends anymore to her mother. Again, it's not like they stopped her from fading from existence not that long ago. Will says she has come to talk about Elion, not Matt. I'll explain that in a bit. Cornelia is reminded that she is being petty and there are bigger things to worry about. The Oracle links their hands and basically says to get over it for now, and here's another weird vibe. They head to Meridian where Caleb tries to stop them at first, thinking this is for Indarno until Himrish appears in his warrior look. He tells Caleb not everything is as it seems, that, quote, our perceptions are often clouded by our emotions. Let's count that as a point towards my Nerissa theory, by the way. I mean, he's blushing profusely as he says it. I see that as a personal embarrassment. Anyways, Himrish tells Will it is time to return the crown's light. She's at first hesitant and afraid to give up this source of peace within her, but she does, and the crown is freed, taking a lot out of Will. Cornelia is the only one to run to Will's side. Giving up the light was like giving up a part of herself. The Oracle says it shows her worth as a leader, and he's blushing again. I'm going to assume it's to indicate he has flowing blood now, being out of Kandrakar. If not, then there are a lot of weird times he's blushing. After this, we see Haylin musing on the latest happenings. How she felt betrayed that Yenlin went into Will's dream, how her, Irma, and Taranee felt looked over when it was Cornelia to get the breath of time, and felt even more left out when they learned that Will and Cornelia had just done what they did without them. Cornelia and Will are back on good terms. I mean, look at her proudly telling the story well. Will definitely needs an IV drip of nutrients. During all of this chaos, Haylin got her braces removed and made them into pieces of jewelry for the girls, which is gross, but unifying. Back in Kandrakar, Fodarno is redecorating while the gang meets for their plan of attack. Will has finally gotten to tell the girls that Indarno is actually Phobos. The girls start to fight again, and then Himrish starts to do some reverse psychology to whip them into action by saying since no one is asking them to take down Phobos, they can just leave it be. They have their daily lives to worry about, after all. But Irma takes the bait and then gives a morale-lifting hurrah speech. Calling out another awkward moment here, by the way. First off, they're discussing how to open the prison doors. Himrish explains that the magic of Kandrakar is the same as the heart, obviously, but it comes off weird here. He is again blushing, holding Will's hand, and says, after that first part, nothing can resist you for long. Despite the chat about going right now, Himrish tells them that they should wait. This chapter ends with them sitting at the park. Haylin admits that she is jealous of people with normal lives, and the girls agree they should take a day for themselves. Taranee, Will, and Cornelia go play volleyball. Irma and Haylin go grocery shopping because Irma has to, and that's another thing we'll talk about later. Back in Kandrakar, it is time for Fodarno to go through his magical fasting period, where he essentially enters an area of sensory deprivation. Well, if he talks, no sound is coming out of his mouth at least. He tells everyone that they are not allowed out of their quarters until his fast is over. Not much time passes before he starts to have an impatient meltdown. The girls and Himrish use this time to invade the Tower of Mists. Not sure why Orube isn't there, so they strike the door with their powers and are granted access. Will gives a walking order with her and Himrish in the lead, and Taranee and Irma bringing up the rear, to which Irma gets offended. Meanwhile, Fodarno sneaks away from his fast to enter the prison. Because of this, he doesn't have his full powers, and cannot spot the group hiding nearby. He enters his old cell, and Darfo appears very weak. It appears that he is here to take some power from him. Cedric appears not long after, and has spotted the group. He tells Fodarno of this. In exchange for this information, Cedric asks to share in the glory, unsure what he means by that. Only to be met by betrayal, though. Fodarno calls for help, framing Cedric as an intruder, saying he'd never share anything with Cedric. Cedric manages to easily escape under a cloak. The girls search frantically for Elion's cell. The Tower of Mists is making it difficult as the rooms and paths constantly change. Yanlin is able to find them as she is the guardian of the tower. Guards show up, calling Himmrish a traitor, and apparently he can do Jedi mind tricks, getting them to think that there is no one there and that they don't need help. As this happens, the girls find Elion and return her crown. Cornelia is relieved, but Himmrish senses something. With an evil smile, Elion attacks. Of course, this is actually Cedric, and he begins demanding power from Phobos. He poses that while Phobos get the universe, he should get Meridian. During this conversation, Phobos has a flashback to his childhood. He looks about 5 or 6 years old and is reaching for the crown of light that's just sitting on a pedestal. His hand gets slapped by his mother, holding a baby we can assume is Elion. She reminds him that law states only women are the true rulers of Meridian. This is all the flashback has, but I wish we saw more, like maybe Phobos being overlooked because he was not a firstborn female, leading to his resentment, but I guess we can just assume that. Also, you figure the mother would be wearing the crown of light, but she isn't. I don't think that is her pajama cap on her head. In the present time, Phobos justifies him saying yes to Cedric's demands by saying Meridian is not his destiny, but at least he can instead have infinite worlds as Oracle. Back in the tower, the girls are trapped. Haylin, of course, freaks out over her unconscious grandma. She will never get used to death because of Yanlin, I swear. Himmrish tells her Yanlin is stronger than she thinks, though. They learn that they can't break their binds alone, but must use their powers together. They are freed and Yanlin awakens. Will suddenly disappears and Cornelia immediately jumps into action. Himmrish stops her, saying Elion and Indarno are top priority. I love this side-eye that Cornelia gives him after that. We see Will has been brought before Fodarno, where he again makes the demand for the heart, showing her images of a frightened Susan. Will at first thinks it's a trick because of the breath of time having frozen life on Heatherfield. We saw earlier, though, that the hourglass malfunctioned back on Earth. What happens next is really cool. Fodarno begins to show Will what he claims to be the future. A future where the girls are applying to college and want nothing to do with Will, as they don't on Cornelia. Will leaves distraught and runs into Matt, where he breaks up with her. After the vision, Will is still holding strong, but is clearly hurt. He then replays the vision over and over, hoping to break her. Meanwhile, Himmrish convinces the girls that Will can hold her own, and reaffirms that they trust her, Cornelia saying, of course. The girls again join powers after Taranee telepathically locates Elion and sets her free. Himmrish locates Indarfo and awakens him. Back in the Oracle's chambers, Will seems to be breaking and summons the heart. He goes to grab it. Will uses it to zap him. Finally, Phobos splits from Indarno's body. During this, Cedric has been addressing the congregation disguised as Yanlin. The crew butts in and tells them how close they were to gaining Phobos as an oracle. Elion and Haylin zap Yanrick and reveal his true identity. Thankfully, Elion easily takes back the crown, but Cedric escapes. Phobos bolts. Irma, Taranee, and Haylin pursue. Cornelia and Will hang back, where Cornelia asks how Will is doing, and Will expresses her fears about the vision. Team Hit corners Phobos by a ledge. Irma marches forward, and Phobos steps back, saying Kandrakar can't have him, and then he falls. Taranee and Haylin are somewhat horrified. Well, only about telling Elion. Irma is completely unfazed and says he's only falling for eternity, with a smile and a wink. Elion was behind them and saw it all. She says she lost Phobos a long time ago, but gained 5 sisters. After everything, the congregation, Elion, Indarno, and Himmrish bow before the Guardians. Before the girls go home, the Oracle pulls them aside. Cornelia had expressed to Himmrish what happened to Will regarding the future visions. Now, this is crucial. Himmrish says that, quote, no one, not even an oracle, can foresee the future, but an evil creature can perceive our deepest fears and make them seem real, end quote. Think about that when you're remembering the visions that he showed Cornelia and Caleb about their relationship. They were not actual possible futures, but instead their fears. Will is comforted by this, but I am horrified. Anyway, to wrap up the main plot, we see that Kandrakar's murals create themselves. Back in Heatherfield at the Hales, their grandma is visiting and she brought unwanted fish. She seems very annoyed and is frequently putting down Cornelia's mother. She also seems like that relative that is always saying really uncomfortable things. For example, if she says Napoleon is not a real cat because he isn't, purebred. They clearly laugh about her in secret, and also I think her reaction to Peter is weird, as when he shows up, she seems to immediately dislike him, even though she barely knew him, and said that his clothes were horrendous. I think there's other reasons that she doesn't like him, and I'll leave it at that. Again, remember, the family member nobody likes. Peter shows up, surprising Cornelia, which makes her knock the breath of time from her neck, and she later discovers it's cracked. She puts it in her drawer for safekeeping beside her old diary that reminds her of Elion. The next morning, the Hales are watching the news, where every clock in Heatherfield has stopped, which makes everyone late and frazzled. The clocks are stopped at a time that Cornelia links to when the hourglass cracked. The next morning, Cornelia is about to share the news when Halen jumps in first, but neither of them get a chance to speak because Miss Knickerbocker pushes everyone to get to class. Later that day, we see Taranee musing about a lesson on the Middle Ages as she heads to the bathroom. She sees something odd and chases it in, only to see the streets of Meridian sprawl before her. To make it extra odd, Frost attacks her. If you remember, Kandrakar imprisoned him in Arc 2. He leaps at her through some flames she creates, only for her to blink and find herself in a flaming bathroom. At recess, Taranee shares her story, and this leads to Halen's story from that morning. Because of the time blunder, Halen's parents didn't wake up before her. This reminds her of how Yanlin used to wake up first, only to find Yanlin standing in her kitchen. Halen is of course surprised and asks why she isn't in Kandrakar. Yanlin is now shocked, drops her bowl, and asks how she learned about Kandrakar, meaning this is pre-witch Yanlin. Her mother walks in and faints just before Yanlin disappears. Halen says she disappeared just like she did a few years ago, referring to her death. She is never going to grieve properly. Irma's dad picks her up after school. Cornelia still hasn't told them about the hourglass, by the way. Mr. Lair asks if they can go to the police station because Alion's family has reappeared. Alion is dressed like a queen. In fact, what Cornelia pictured her in that morning. They don't even get to chat before she disappears. The girls call a meeting and Will raises a connection between the incidents. A connection to one name. A cloaked figure arrives just as the girls think the same name. Phobos. And their attacks aren't landing. Apparently, before Phobos gave the breath of time, he cast a spell of rebirth where he placed a bit of his spirit within a failsafe. The hourglass cracking was a convenient catalyst. He was able to cast visions that triggered their memories of him. Since he is currently intangible, he is winning. Back at the Hales, Napoleon knocks the hourglass into the fish tank Lillian moved it earlier. Because of this, the sand cannot escape the hourglass, and Phobos starts to fade and grow weaker. Even though the sand escaping is what was solidifying him, its stopping left him just tangible enough to where they could attack him, I guess. They blast him and he's gone in a cloud of dust. They vow to forget him. Shortly after this victory, the girls are brought to what they call the Chamber of Spirits, where magical artifacts store copies of themselves. Yanlin clarifies that only an artifact's owner can touch it, making this room safer than I originally feared. Imagine this heist. Apparently, there is even a copy of the heart here. Yanlin says with fear, though, in her eyes that the heart should not touch its double. Trouble would ensue. Double trouble. Don't spoil it for me, but I would love for that to be a plot point. Cornelia is instructed to rotate the copy of the Breath of Time, and once the sand runs through to the other side, time on Earth would rewind to the moment the hourglass cracked. Only the girls would remember everything. Meaning this time, Cornelia is ready to see Peter and does not get startled. The girls make a final stop to see the Oracle. They've been summoned. They expect him to be his old, distant, and cold self, but he is warmly laughing with Endarno, and are also surprised Endarno is allowed to speak freely. The Oracle called them here to say thank you. Irma is thinking to herself that he must be buttering them up for another mission. He responds aloud that he is not. The Oracle then makes a decree that from now on he wants open communication. He will consult the council before making decisions and says there is nothing more constructive than conversation. Cornelia and Will share a knowing look. This is their relationship after all. Will the leader, Cornelia the manager. He says a true leader is humble and admits their weaknesses. Will thinks of Matt for some reason. I guess Matt is her weakness. The Oracle bows to the Guardians. Will thinks to herself, that he is more human than before. So before we delve into the side stuff like relationships, I do want to share my thoughts on the main plot. I enjoy that we got to see more Kandrakar lore, for example the Tower of Mists, but we didn't really get to see why Nerissa hated it so much. I mean, she did say that that was where Kandrakar threw their mistakes like hypocrites, and maybe she considered the prison cells there cruel and unusual. I mean, if you think about it, Kandrakar really didn't try to take down Phobos until after he almost got universe-threatening power. They didn't even get new guardians for thousands, probably years, referring to the time between Yanlin and Haylin's guardian group. I mean, seeing Phobos was a surprise, to be honest, but after you know, when you read from the beginning, you can kind of see the very obvious hints. Hence my reactions earlier. So going back to Cornelia being a sort of target for Phobos, back when he was their enemy, she actually was the weak link. Like, there was the power struggle between her and Will for leadership, and she would always act irrationally when it came to Caleb and Elion. So then again, he also tried to use Elion against her. And she was also the only target of that magical butterfly. Possibly he thought there would be a domino effect from it. He didn't, however, account for Cornelia's growth. So I actually would have preferred if the arc ended when Phobos fell and saving a comeback for later and, give the breadth of time the breadth of time. So this arc ends pretty quietly with chapter 48, New Horizons, which is aptly named because it feels like the beginning of the next arc. So I'm actually going to save that for my arc 5 video. Now, on to the relationships. We're going to start with Will and Matt, as it actually influences the main plot. Once again, we start the arc with one of them, Matt at the other. This time, Will at Matt. Remember, she thinks Matt likes Orube, as he was looking for her last arc. Confusion that Dee had created when she stole the pet shop's money last arc. I'm also reminded of how at the beginning of arc 3, Matt was mad at Will for thinking he was into Mandy. It's like she learned nothing. At the very beginning of the arc, Orube shows up to see the girls after school. Will suggests that they all hang out on this beautiful day, only no one is available. Next, Will and Orube are wandering around Heatherfield, Will speaking non-stop about nonsense. Orube is confused and weirded out. Apparently, Will called Orube sounding worried, so Orube had rushed to the school. Will's thoughts give away that she doesn't want Orube around Matt. Orube leaves to go back to work. At the shop, we see Matt asking why Will might be upset, bringing up the money Dee told him that Orube stole. Remember, the money was returned before anyone knew. Orube says she's never done anything like that. The phone starts ringing, but Matt is pondering that Will has been acting jealous. Orube gets annoyed and rushes to answer the phone by passing Matt some kittens, but they scratch her. Will happens to peer in the window just after this and only sees Matt holding Orube's hand and bolts off. During this emotional episode, she flashes through all her memories of the pet shop. Later in the arc, Will and Haylin are headed to Haylin's dentist when they unexpectedly crash into Matt. We see some of the conversation from Haylin's perspective as she watches from inside a shop. She imagines it's going well. In reality, it's going horribly. Matt is giving Will the 3rd degree for lying about Orube stealing money. Will can't simply tell Matt that it was her Astrodrop's fault. Though his level of anger only heightens her jealousy of Orube, we see this chibi scenario in her mind where Matt is fighting Will to save Orube. She erupts, saying, why doesn't he just say he's chosen Orube? She finally communicates that she thought he knew her, that she could trust him, that him judging her, condemning her, has really hurt. Let it be known she has done the same thing to him numerous times. She rides off, and all Matt can think is, what's up with her? He spends little time considering what just happened and sulks off, saying he gives up. Bad on his part. The next interaction Will has with Orube is a sour one. This was just after the trip to Kandrakar where Fodarno tried to take the heart, so you could look at this instance as Will trying to feel in control after that uncomfortable encounter. She screams at Orube that she should have been upfront about liking Matt. Orube chuckles at the misunderstanding. Will is not listening and goes on to call her a coward and a liar. This causes Orube to retaliate. She says that when she first met Will, she did not like her, but then she grew to. She calls her an exceptional guardian and tops it off by saying it's a shame she's so childish. By the way, this comment later contributes to her feelings of isolation and darkness that keep popping up with a montage of people calling feeling her immature running through her mind. The next time the two see each other is when Cornelia is dealing with the memory butterfly situation. Orube reiterates that she isn't interested in Matt, and then Will childishly says neither is she. We do see Orube think to herself that Matt has helped her feel less lonely and different. Will is in such a tizzy that she's drinking cocoa with sugar. Cornelia recognizes this as a coping mechanism of Will's. Cornelia tries to give her relationship advice. Will gets annoyed by this and says she couldn't even save her own relationship. Thankfully, she feels immediate regret and says she doesn't know where that came from. Right then, the Grumper sisters show up and tease her about a photo of her and her mom out with Mr. Collins, calling her a teacher's pet. He's been easy on her after all. Later that day, Matt tries to say hi, but the gang is distracted. He follows them around the corner, narrowly missing them enter a portal. Matt gets past a flyer with a date idea for him and Will. We know that it was Cedric, and the flyer mentions a Heatherfield carnival. We see Matt discussing the flyer with Joel, a friend of his we hadn't seen before. Joel hangs up with Matt and finds the flyer he was handed, except it's for the Golden, the diner they frequent. Joel thinks that Matt is making a cheap move. Clearly there was a spell involved. Mr. Collins saves Will from Susan scolding by informing her Matt is there to pick her up. The carnival from the flyer is busy. Will recognizes it as the carnival that's been abandoned for years. Remember, Vathek hid here in Arc 1. She decides they must have reopened it. They ride the Ferris wheel and muse about finding Heatherfield beautiful. They lean in for a kiss. Before they can kiss, though, the wheel halts. Will senses something, and suddenly the carnival is again decrepit and destroyed. The people disappear. Matt falls from the cart. Will calls upon the heart to encapsulate him. While Will is distracted, as Cedric bolts to the heart, we see Matt remembers seeing it when he was puppeted by Nerissa in Arc 2. New information to us that Matt remembers this. Matt saves Will from a blast that Cedric throws at her. The omnipotent narrator says they were saved by love. The blast deflects to Cedric and he disappears, yelling, quote, "You haven't seen the last of me." So Matt now knows about the Guardians. He and Will share a kiss under the moonlight, and that's all we see for this moment. Also, the Grumper sisters thought that Matt was taking Will to this club that night. They show up to crash the date, only to not find them. Then two creeps close in saying drinks are on them and not letting them leave. All around uncomfortable and questionable. Sometime later, Matt and Will go on a date to the Golden Diner, where they get 2 huge sundaes and laugh about it until there's awkward silence. Then when they try to talk, they accidentally keep interrupting each other. It is this date where Will truly explains about the Guardians in greater detail. They discuss it for so long that they end up wrapping up and walking to the beach side. Matt seems a little off-put and confused before fanboying. He wants to tell his friends, and Will tells him that this has to remain a secret. Just then, Matt gets called to hang with Joel and Peter, who just bought tickets to the Carmilla concert. Will goes to meet the girls. She needs to let the girls know about the attack the other night, but doesn't want to tell them Matt knows their secret. Also, Will doesn't know it was Cedric that attacked. Just us. Will keeps slipping on the details, and Cornelia catches this. But everyone gets distracted, wanting the details of the date. Cornelia says it was ungentlemanly for Matt not to walk her home, to which Peter also says this to Matt. The comic cuts back and forth a lot, like that song Summer Lovin' in Grease.
She got friendly, holding my hand. Well, she got friendly down in the sand.
Tell me more.
And when they say they finally kissed, the crowd goes wild. This puts Will on cloud 9 for days, and Susan wonders why. Once she finds out they kissed, she immediately freaks out. Susan starts spiraling and thinks that Matt must be the reason for Will's bad grades. Will erupts at Mr. Collins, who has just arrived, asking if Susan ever drives him nuts. Susan has a chibi montage in her head of Matt mistreating Will. To me, it looks like Susan is probably projecting her abusive relationship with Will's dad onto Will's relationship. Mr. Collins chats with Susan and helps lessen her fears and calm her down. Matt expresses to Will that keeping this secret is tough and that he would like Will to be able to tell him when things are troublesome. When Will returns, Susan says she isn't as worried about Matt now and says it's okay for them to see each other more. Susan is sad that Will didn't get giddy and celebrate, and she says she always seems sad now. Later in the arc, Will refuses to tell Matt what's been upsetting her. This infuriates Matt because he expressed that he wanted her to trust him. He says it feels like he is carrying a burden that keeps getting heavier. Will says that being with her must mean he is also sharing the burden of the heart of Kandrakar. They have an internal conversation with themselves where each of them are having breakup thoughts, Matt saying he must not be strong enough and Will just feeling guilty. They both want to say I love you, but can't seem to. Joel calls Matt back in to rehearse, and they both leave the situation awkwardly. After the breath of time cracks, Matt is able to notice that something is wrong. He turns down hanging out with Peter. He wishes Peter could know what Will and Taranee go through, and he hopes she's just watching TV at home. But he runs into Susan and makes excuses for her. He heads to Orube's, where she finally gets to introduce her true self, and they team up to call the girls' families and make excuses for all of them. So eventually it is revealed to the rest of the girls that Matt knows their secret now, and while the girls were mad about it, they are very thankful for this because he did this for them. Even Taranee and Halen give him a peck. The fight that Will stormed off and then later cried was when the girls found out about Matt. Will shoos them off, and Cornelia says to Matt if he ever hurts her, he'll be dealing with them. Regarding Cornelia, her and Peter's relationship is finally getting to grow. We start the arc with us getting reminded that Cornelia has a crush on Peter when she needs a ride home and is completely flustered. Halen and Irma are so happy about this. However, she doesn't give in to her feelings and stops herself when she thinks he is cute. Later, when Cornelia needs to take Napoleon to the vet, she's annoyed that Peter skims over her to say hi to Joel, who has also just shown up. Joel reminds him she's there, and he just says, quote, "That's my little sister's friend," which irks her more. The time that Taranee's getting yelled at for her grades, Peter gives her a heads up, and Cornelia blushes at him. Upon another visit, Peter brings in sandwiches. He's made for them, and they make eyes at each other. While Joel and Peter are buying Carmilla tickets, we see Peter gawking at the reporter on screen, who happens to look a lot like Cornelia. There's a point when the Grumper sisters are making fun of Cornelia and saying that no one from this world is good enough for her. She's reminded of Caleb. Speaking of Caleb, as I said before, something has clearly grown between him and Elion. We see him thinking that he misses her smile when she's in Heatherfield hiding. After thinking that, his thoughts move to Cornelia, and he muses on his feelings about seeing her. It's affirmed they will always have special places in each other's hearts, but they are now just friends. Elion's friends. Except he's in love with Elion, which is clear to us, even though it's not said outright. For example, when the girls are roasting Elion for her past crush on Matt, it leads into Irma accusing Elion of crushing on Caleb. Even Caleb says the sun doesn't even shine as bright when she's gone. If you didn't know, there is a whole special about them, which we'll cover when it happens chronologically. Flashback to Cornelia. She's getting another cute moment with Peter when she goes to gossip about Guy and Irma at the Carmilla concert, and didn't realize he was behind her. It's here that Peter thinks to himself when Cornelia lets loose that she is cute. When the girls find out Matt knows about them, Cornelia mentions Taranee having to tell Nigel, Halen having to tell Eric, and trails off about herself. Halen is hoping she mentions a particular someone, but she doesn't. It's revealed later to Halen that Cornelia has been playing hard to get with Peter. We later see Matt and Peter chatting about a girl who always seems unavailable to Peter. Matt confirms that's an act and that the girl does like Peter. Of course, Matt knows the toxic tactic. The point in the arc that Cornelia doesn't want anything to do with the group, she mindlessly wanders into Taranee's house. She doesn't see Peter, but Peter sees her. Taranee wasn't home, so Peter thinks she was there for him. He takes it as confirmation she likes him. The time that he stopped over where the breath of time got cracked, he was hand-delivering an invitation to a beach party. Again, this is the outfit that Cornelia's grandma judged him for. Ridiculous. Irma starts the arc dealing with Martin. Her astral drop Mara, back in Arc 3, did damage to their friendship. It shakes her up pretty bad that he won't talk to her, and Cornelia and Taranee notice this and say that she couldn't have his unrequited attention forever. Irma has a body crisis, by the way, where she dyes her hair. It looks like her mother's about to slap her here, but instead she shows love and wants to listen. Irma calls herself a thing and points out everything she thinks is physically wrong with her, saying she'll never find love. Her mother responds by using a flower blooming analogy, saying while daisies bloom first and fast, roses bloom later and slow. Cornelia and Taranee try to set Irma up on a date. She doesn't know it's a setup, and they ditch her, pretending Taranee is sick. It goes horribly. He doesn't have the same humor at the movie and is a poop about it, and then he tries to control what she's eating at the Golden Diner after the movie. Some days later, Irma gets to talk to Martin, and she sets the record straight that they're just friends. He takes it as there still being hope, unfortunately. Now to the infamous Carmilla concert and Joel. Joel is a huge Carmilla fan. Remember, so is Irma. She even keeps a journal of all her lyrics. They hit it off immediately, and they are wearing the same shirt at the concert, even though they were bought years apart. We later see them chatting on the phone for hours. Joel even avoids a cobalt blue rehearsal to spend more time with Irma, saying, quote, "Days like this should be enjoyed to the last ray of sun." Mind you, she was wearing a sweater with a sun on the back. She was getting photos developed. Some are from the ARC 2 camping trip, by the way. Also, remember when I said Irma had to go grocery shopping? Probably not, but I wanted to point out that she's looking at things like low fat, no sugar, and low cholesterol, which can be a red flag for her body insecurities. Later, when hearing of Phobos' need to fast, which is essentially starving for a controlled period of time, she calls it a miracle diet. Halen seems to notice this, and that's all we see of Irma's relationship and development in this arc. Halen's braces moved her teeth so much faster than expected, probably the work of Xinjing's gift before it was removed. Anyways, Halen finds a CD for Eric that is supposedly super rare. She keeps putting off giving it to him, and it just keeps getting pushed off anyways because of having to go to Kandrakar so much. She finally gets it to him, and he is so excited he gives Halen a peck on the cheek, and he is surprised he did this impulsively. They act like it's their first kiss, but it's not. Eric also gave Halen a kiss on the cheek before she left for Redstone back in Arc 3. Regardless, Halen is hyped. When Cornelia and Halen are walking down the street together, two skater boys try to flirt with them, but they are too busy talking about Eric's parents coming to town. A few days later, Halen spills soup on a woman at her family's restaurant. The woman isn't mad because her husband would not stop talking about work anyways. Jumping back to the point about Halen's braces, the dentist asks her who will be first to see her without braces, and at this point in the story, the girls are distant from the constant fighting they're doing. She equates her braces to unity, and this is where she gets the idea to turn them into jewelry. Again, ew. She adds a note saying, "Never alone, never again." Let's see how long that lasts. She goes to show Eric her new teeth alignment and realizes Eric's parents have arrived. It just so happens to be the lady that had soup spilled on her. Things are awkward from Halen's perspective, and she nearly breaks an ancient astrolabe, or astrolabe, I don't know how to say it, when a message from Kandrakar startled her, and she bolts. That night, more information is given about Eric's family. Zacharias, his grandpa, isn't as boisterous and friendly as his TV show counterpart. Eric's parents are scientists of the sky and travel frequently. Eric wanted to travel too, but they left him in Heatherfield for some normalcy. Eric also holds her hand that night. We see a chibi Halen. Later, Halen tries to make amends for dropping the astrolabe, but a call from Kandrakar sends another message she has to obey, leaving Miss Linden confused, and that's where things are left for now. So Taranee and Nigel have the smallest part of the arc. We just see them kind of having fun and flirting with each other at one point where Peter interrupts and tells them they didn't hear their pizza arrived. Awkward. And at one point Nigel is gushing about the situation that happened with Martin, which I believe was in Arc 2 when the girls went to Invisible and were defending Martin from Uriah. Taranee thinks it's funny, he doesn't know it was them. And here we have an adorable kiss, and that's it. This part wasn't even a minute long. There's a point in time where Orube's wandering the streets wondering why she's still on Earth, what is she looking for, and immediately runs into her neighbor Ray Fieldstein as he invites her to a party, saying he hopes to get to know her better. We don't get to see the party. Also, I'm pretty sure his hair was darker before. At the carnival, you can see balloons featuring Donald Duck and the genie, also Mickey down in the corner. Matt's face here is just hilarious. We also see some balloons featuring Mickey and a rabbit that kind of reminds me of Pikachu because of the black spots on the ears. And there's a character on this balloon here, which I imagine they come from some other comic, but I'm just not sure which. They gave Halen a lazy eye here. This picture on Cornelia's shelf is the Halloween photo, just very far away and very low detail. Another hint of Pikachu back there. And now here's some of the magazine covers from this arc. This one's hilarious where it's like, have a witch birthday party, quiz, how brave are you, poker on Irma's closet, and Cornelia is wiped out of existence. This one is also funny as it says, Cornelia crazy? Draw her in 9 easy steps. This one too, 100% fun. Solve exciting mind games. Visit 2 sizzling hotspots. And Phobos is all set to get Will's magic pendant. Not as many Easter eggs as in the past, but still very entertaining. Thanks for watching and see you in Arc 5.